All right, guys, thanks for joining us today. I hope everyone is staying cautious and safe at home. I'm Courtney Latima, and I lead our Endpoint Specialist team here at Winslow. We're also joined by John Britton, who is the Director of Product Marketing at Absolute. I'm going to give you just a quick glance of kind of what we're going to be discussing today, and we'll go over a few different things. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So I'm going to kick us off with a quick overview of who Winslow is, and for those of you who do not know, then I'll hand it off to John. He'll give us a sneak peek at the 2020 Endpoint Trends report from Absolute. I'll come back and round us off with a quick call to action. We'll go over a Q&A session. If you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to just drop them in the chat box. We'll get to them towards the end of the session. We have about 5 to 10 minutes left at the end to go over any of those. So feel free to drop anything you need in those questions, and John and myself will handle that towards the end. All right, so we'll go ahead and get kicked off. All right, so who is Winslow? So just a quick glance at us. So we are headquartered in Waltham, Mass, and opened up offices in both North Carolina and New York last year. Historically, we've been a data center focused company. In the past few years, we've poured a ton of resources into growing out our endpoint side of the business, allowing us to be a full solution provider from the desktop all the way to the cloud. We have an amazing team of systems engineers that help us on the front end of a project, and a full team of professional services team that helps us on the flip side with the installation, the deployment, training, staff log, pretty much anything you can need. We also have a full range of cybersecurity consulting services, assessments, and solutions to help keep your business and data safe. A few awards that we've won over the past few years. We have been Dell Technology Partner of the Year 5 times. And last year, we were named Arctic Wolf's Partner of the Year. We have quite a few other Boston-based awards as well that you'll see on the next slide. But we are probably most proud of our CRN Triple Crown Awards. This is just a validation that not only are we growing quickly, but we're putting a lot of time into making sure that we're keeping up with what's going on in the technology industry, and we're able to offer our customers the best of what's available. Our staff is fully trained on it, and we're able to just kind of help you guys move forward in your growth. So the last thing I wanted to go over before I hand it over to John, on the next slide, you'll see our product overlay. So I mentioned before our cybersecurity offerings. Just to touch a little bit deeper on that, Matt Kozlowski is our in-house CISSP, and he's built out our cybersecurity portfolio around the NIST framework. They break it into 5 primary functions. So identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We offer a wide variety of products and services to cover all 5. I'm going to hand it over to John to explain how Absolute fortifies your security posture and makes endpoint security resilient. Then I'll come back with a quick call to action at the end, and then we'll open up for the Q&A. So John, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Courtney. I'm John Britton with Absolute, and just want to say thank you very much for Winslow for having us on today's webinar, and just give you a little bit of a sneak peek at our Endpoint Trends report. It was actually supposed to be published about a week ago, but with the pandemic that's facing all of us, we've pushed that back to have some special offers to our customers, and I'll cover that right before I hand my part of this back over to Courtney. And so a little bit about Absolute. We've got over 12,000 global customers. We're managing 8 million plus devices in the world, 500 employees. We're headquarters in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm out of our Austin, Texas office. And what makes Absolute unique is we're embedded in the firmware. We've been in the firmware since 2005. We're the only third-party vendor, if you will, that's actually in the firmware. And what that does is allows us to remain persistent on devices, so we can survive device wipes, we can survive hard drive replacements, all fun things to allow IT departments to secure endpoints. And then over on the far right side, you'll see that we're in, or which devices we're in the firmware of. So if you've got an enterprise device, there's a really good chance that we're operating in the firmware or can operate in the firmware of that device. And the problem we're trying to solve or help everybody solve is that it's really a hot mess, right? There's hundreds of different security vendors out there, from our great partners like Dell all the way down to, brand new enterprises that start. If you follow, the tech reports, you'll see new startups popping up all the time, many with great ideas trying to solve new problems. And we're all focused on solving those problems. But what that creates is a real challenge for vendors, IT departments, discovering what the perimeter is, understanding how devices interact with different modules, security agents, apps. It all becomes very difficult. And we're all trying to defend the endpoint because, and IDC has stated that 70% of all breaches originate on that endpoint, right? Gartner's throwing out the stat of 28% of corporate data resides on laptops and mobile devices. So we're doing a great job of using the cloud and securing corporate data behind the firewall between the corporate or enterprise firewall, but we're also allowing data to come out to those endpoint devices. And we have to protect that to stay secure, to stay safe, and to allow us to really focus on best practices as outlined in the NIST cybersecurity framework. Part of the endpoint trends report that we've been working on is we've noticed that there's an average of 10.2 security agents per endpoint. This is up from last year's report. We noticed 9.8 security agents. And that seems like a lot, and it really is. So sometimes you'll have multiple firewalls. At Absolute, we've just changed VPN providers. So we're in the process of migrating from the old one to the new one. So I've actually got 2 VPN agents on my device. And I've got one piece of encryption, and I've got a DLP piece, and I've got Absolute. And all of these agents and apps are all fighting for resources on the device. And I'll come back to this in a little bit. We're also seeing, of the devices that we're monitoring, 381 unique operating system versions, right? So Windows 10 has many. There's OS X for Macintosh devices. There's Chromebooks. There's just a plethora and a lot of devices going on. 75% of the devices we see are actually running Windows 10, which is exciting. And when the Endpoint Trends report comes out, you'll see the decrease of Windows 7 devices. But of those 75% of the devices running Windows 10, 45% are running unpatched software. And by unpatched, I mean it's more than a year and a half old. So when there's a NSA bulletin that came out in January that encouraged everybody to upgrade to the very latest version of Windows, IT departments are struggling to keep up. They're struggling to find the best way to patch devices. And then of those 75% of the devices, 30% of the devices are running patches that are or builds that are 4+ weeks out. Now, Microsoft 2 days ago announced a new vulnerability within Windows 10. So we're constantly having to prioritize resources and time. And then now from this work at home environment that we're all finding ourselves in, just the struggle of how do I get a patch out to an endpoint, and that struggle is real, and that's something that Absolute's working on and addressing. And I'll get to that in just a minute. And sorry for delaying things. But one of the other things that we noticed in the endpoint or the Endpoint Trends report is how different applications and security components work together. So just a preview here. You'll notice that there's some versions of antivirus with encryption that are really strong, and those will be up in the upper right-hand corner, and some that are not so strong, right, where they fight with each other and they're falling over because of resource constraints and whatnot on the devices. As I move forward here, let's see. If you don't mind moving the screen forward for me. What we also noticed was that just because you've bought, an antivirus or an encryption solution from the same vendor, that bundle does not always work well together. It's not, in some instances, they're not particularly optimized to be successful, if you will, or be compliant or help you do your job. So that'll show up in the Endpoint Trends Report. The goal, again, for the Endpoint Trends Report is to be published at the end of this month, and hopefully we'll get to be there. One of the other great things with Absolute, what we're seeing is because we can help automate and manage the IT, or excuse me, the endpoint devices for IT, we're seeing customers that are using Absolute Resilience have a score, a best-in-class rate, if you will, much higher than those that are not using our resilience product or just coming to us for the first time. And here's examples. So within Absolute and with Winslow's consultants, we can go in and show before and after pictures. So in this particular example on client management was only installed on an average of 70% of the devices for this particular customer. And you'll notice we give reasons down here at the bottom on what those problems are. And then after going through using resilience, we can clean that information up. We can get a much higher rate of installation, of compliance throughout the entire community of applications required for IT for them to secure and protect the endpoint devices. Hopefully this builds well. I apologize for having the builds in here, but what we're looking at within Endpoint Resilience really is all about asset intelligence. Where's your device located? How is it acting? Are there key indicators on the device that would indicate that the device may fail or that encryption may not come back on after you've done a patch? Risk response, very important part of, and if you remember, I think it was slide 3 where we were talking about the NIST cybersecurity framework. There's a huge column all on risk response and how you mitigate that response. And then finally, the endpoint security piece, making sure that the applications that you have installed on your endpoint devices are actually working properly. And as we get more into resilience, there's a couple of quotes here from Gartner and IDG. I'll let you read those at your leisure and actually move forward. Within Absolute, we have 3 primary products. There's our license levels. There's an intelligence pillar, a resilience pillar, and a persistence pillar. And the focus for persistence is making sure the device is operating with the information that, or excuse me, the applications that you want on the device. Resilience is ensuring that those applications are always up, always running. And then the intelligence is looking at what's going on that device. In the long term, we hope to be able to do predictive analysis where we can indicate or predict when computers will go out of compliance in a much more seamless fashion, working with the appropriate vendors, working with the IT departments so that there is better visibility so that we can help protect endpoints at a much greater rate than we currently are. A different breakdown on the licenses and where they are, the resilience license, which we consider our best in class. This is everything. It's geared towards your security specialist, your asset manager would use things within the control area and the visibility just to understand where the devices are and everything. And I showed you that hot mess screen earlier. I think it was the 3rd slide that I showed with all of the different pieces of security applications that are out there in the world. With Absolute and Winslow, we can work together to maintain and control and have some sort of normalcy on the endpoint so that when you do make a large investment in a particular vendor, that we can ensure that that vendor's application is running properly, that you have the visibility into the device, and you have the necessary intelligence to move forward with how to configure and manage those devices. Absolute's focus is across the board. We have specialists in finance and insurance, healthcare, business services, government, with a special unique offering for education. So 27 years ago, Absolute started in the education space. Schools were first starting to hand out $4,000 and $5,000 laptops, and they needed real insurance. Absolute, the founders of the company said, hey, we think we have a problem or a solution to this problem. We think that we can be able to allow you to locate those devices, whether they're on the school grounds, whether they're at a child's house, where those devices are. And that's the original history of Absolute. And then finally, before I turn this back over to Courtney, and I feel like I've been rushing through everything and I apologize about that. With the COVID-19, Absolute has been really busy rolling out solutions to help our customers as they transition from a traditional work environment in the office to VPN. So 2 weeks ago, Absolute turned on VPN app persistence for all of our customers, regardless of the license. Excuse me. And what this allows is those endpoints to have secure communication back into the enterprise. And why this is important is many of us weren't accustomed to working at home, right? So we probably never configured VPN on our devices. We probably never thought about having to use our home internet, which can be secure, could also be unsecure, to then go and track assets. And the last thing we want to do is for employees that are now struggling with working at home to be unproductive. Because without Absolute, without VPN working, an employee has two choices. They either pick up the phone and they spend a couple of hours trying to troubleshoot with their IT department and the help desk. And this can be rather challenging because sometimes an employee is not technically savvy and really struggles with controlling the keyboard, and it takes hours to troubleshoot. The other option is for the employee to leave their house, go back into work, possibly violating stay-at-home orders or shelter-in-place orders, and then putting themselves, their family, and the IT department at risk. With the app persistence for VPNs, the IT department, through I think 4 or 5 clicks through the Absolute console, can configure the app persistence for VPN and ensure that that VPN is working, all the way from reporting when it fails, all the way to installing or reinstalling the VPN client so that end users can successfully work from home. The second piece that we just rolled out on Tuesday was automating custom workflows. And what we have is Absolute Reach, which is part of our license, our resilience license of the top tier, enables an IT department to run scripts, whether it's batch scripts or PowerShell scripts, to patch devices, to ensure that users have the right rights, have the right drive mappings, the right applications installed on the device. And then next week, we're rolling out a solution for our education customers. And I can't talk too much about it because it's going to be released next week. But we're really excited about what we're going to do to help all of the students, the educators in the world better communicate with each other so that learning can continue and that we have smart children growing up in this difficult time. And with that, I will turn it back over to Courtney, and I'll say thank you to everybody for listening and for joining us today.
Awesome. John, thank you so much. All right, guys, so what's next? Going back to what I mentioned earlier about the assessments we have around cybersecurity. So our team offers a no-cost NIST assessment to help you better understand where your security posture is today, if and where the gaps are. All we ask is for 60-minute time investment. We'll provide you with a WTG Secure Score report. We'll review it with you. We'll go over everything that we see and make recommendations and help you to understand where the gaps are, what we need to do to fix it, and how we can get to that. So we've gone over a lot of stuff today with Absolute. It's a fantastic product. We're seeing a lot of people looking at the Absolute software now that customers are starting to move to work from home. Even with people accidentally losing systems or systems getting taken, this product in itself allows you to remotely freeze and wipe systems. It allows you to assist in the recovery of those devices. You can see where they are, who's using them, what they're using on them. It really helps with the management of those devices as they're in your employees' offices or homes or wherever they might be working. So we'd love to kind of go over that with you guys. We have a team of 4 endpoint specialists here at Winslow where we focus purely on the endpoint, hardware, software security. Absolute is included in that. In addition, we have another team that's helping us to follow up on all of these events and helping to drive attendance to our webinars. So one of us will be reaching out to you guys after we're done with all this we can work together, go over your schedules, see where we can maybe schedule one of those assessments. And then we can also schedule deeper one-on-one conversations with the Absolute team. We can show you a demo into the actual console and show you exactly what that looks like on your standpoint as you're trying to manage these systems. We know that right now everybody's just trying to figure out their new normal. I mean, for us, I have 6 kids, and what do I do to keep these kids busy all day? What are they doing about school? So there's a lot going on. I have to check to make sure I have enough toilet paper every day, that everybody is good and everything's stocked up. So we really appreciate you spending time with us and taking time to let us talk to you guys about this stuff. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the questions, see if we have any. And then as a follow-up, we'll definitely be reaching out to everybody and answering any other questions that you guys have in scheduling those secure scores. Let's see. I am not seeing any questions. Jordan, I'm not sure if you're seeing any on your side. No, it doesn't look like it. Awesome. Okay. So guys, we appreciate you guys taking time working with us through this. We'll follow up with you guys to schedule those secure scores, to schedule the demos with the Absolute team. We'll also get you guys over some more information about other events that we have coming up and webinars. As everybody's moving to work from home, we're seeing an increase in need and desire for webinars and different kinds of trainings, specifically around security. So we have a lot in the pipeline coming down, and you guys are welcome to join us for any of those. So we'll make sure to get all that information over to you guys. But I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of your day. We'll talk soon to all of you guys. And again, we really appreciate the time you spent with us.